Hi everyone, this is Ethan with Beware Beekeeping. Sorry I haven't posted in a little bit. We've had a few things going on, and since we had such a long break, I figured it'd probably be best to just give a year in review for how we did last year with the bees. We're about to have bee season start up again, so we've actually kind of had about one full year with the two hives that we installed last year. So what we started with last year was we installed two nukes, which is a nucleus. It's 5 frames of bees with brood and the pollen, honey, other things like that, with a queen and that sort of thing. But so it gives you 5 full frames developed out, as opposed to a package of bees, which is the other common one, which is you just get bees and a queen and they're starting from scratch. So nukes really kind of just take off running once you put them in. And so this year, what I wanted to do was, as you can see, I have a 3D printer here behind me. What I wanted to test out is I wanted to see if the bees had any noticeable difference with using 3D printed foundation and frames, kind of like this one right here. There you go. Hopefully that focused on you for you guys. Yeah, so I 3D printed some frames, and I wanted to see if the bees had any different, if they liked them more or less, what the results were with that, and just compare it with a commercial, frames and foundation, that sort of thing. Overall, that experiment, I think we can say the bees didn't really care one way or the other. The biggest problem was me with how I waxed the frames. So when you have something that's not organic, you kind of have to make it smell like bees for the bees to build on it. That's same thing true for commercial foundation versus this kind of stuff here is if it's not necessarily organic, the bees don't know what to do with it. So you wax the frames, you coat it. Well, in my novice experience at that time, I didn't wax them thoroughly. I just put some wax on it. All the other foundations I'd had, they like spray wax through like a mister somehow. And I didn't really do that. I just was like, oh, if this smells like bees, they'll build on it. Well, they built where you put the honey or where you put the wax. So I had some kind of troubles with some wonky comb, but overall they built it out just fine. Later in the season, I added frames that I had waxed much better, and they built those out just fine. So overall, I think as far as the experiment, no real noticeable difference. The downside, as I'll show you guys here, is the size of my printer. So if you see, I had to kind of print things in sections here. And the reason I had to do that was because that's how big the print space on my printer is. So the long and short of it is I need a bigger printer because this works pretty well. The deeps were okay. The mediums, the much smaller frames, were much better. They were more sturdy. But this, when you get this full of honey and all of that, it really starts to pull at it, and namely it's where those joints was that caused the flexing of it, and it just made it a little difficult to deal with. But other than that, I'd say as far as a sample size of one goes, there was no major difference, and it's not quite as expensive to buy commercially. It's one of those where I don't know if I would ever. I do have them on my site to buy if anybody's interested in trying it out. It's not terribly much. It's not much more cheaper to use this. It's one of those where buying commercial. That was the whole reason why I tried, was to see if I could do it cheaper. And I can. If I could print it as one piece, it would be much cheaper. But the fact that I have to do all those joints and stuff makes it a little more pricey. So next was we had those nukes installed. Again, we did that experiment. Both hives took off, like just hit the ground, we're running. We actually had to deal with a little bit of swarming even within our first month or 5-6 weeks of them going in, where they were already wanting to swarm. Even though we were giving them new boxes, they had plenty of space. They were taking off so heavily that they're like, hey, we're ready to swarm. So we did have to fight with that a little bit. Really what we did was we put a queen excluder on the very bottom to kind of prevent the queen from leaving while we dealt with the issues. Kind of did some frame manipulation to kind of move frames around so that they would build it up in a little bit different, because they still had frames that they needed to draw out even though they were trying to swarm. So it's a little bit of a headache, but we got through that with no swarming. We were actually able to put second boxes on, and even a super on the control hive. The brown hive was we called it the control hive because that was the commercial hive. So yeah, everything there went great. And that's when we started running into issues. So the issues we ran into, one thing to keep in mind, anytime you have a beehive, for the new beekeepers out there, the experienced ones probably know this already, but you do need to make sure you're testing your hives for mites. And we were doing that. We had them under control because it was a new nuke. But one thing that was a little bit new to us being here in Texas, and this being the first season, you're kind of learning all the stuff in Texas. Yeah, it gets real hot here in the summer, like really hot, to the point where most of your treatments can't be done. Most of them top out at 90 or 95 degrees. So we had to try another treatment I had never heard or had never used before. It was called HopGuard 3, but I'd heard pretty good things about it, and it didn't have a temperature requirement, and you could also use it with your honey supers on, according to the label, because really what it uses is the same kind of acid that's in hops. The mites can't really tolerate that too much, so you put that in there, and the heat actually kind of helps it fumigate the hive. And it's a pretty natural type treatment. So we put it on for the 14 days that it asked for, but right after that, we pulled the treatment off, and we didn't have a queen. The time was too short for it to be a swarm, we think. We didn't see any swarm cells in there. There were no queen cells, no supersedures, anything like that. The queen just wasn't there for some reason. Not sure what happened there. Did I kill her on the install or sometime in between? Totally could have been. I don't think so, but it could have been. But anyway, so we were dealing with a queen replacement issue in the control hive right after pulling the treatment off. So I didn't test mites post-treatment because I was dealing with a queen issue. And so it took me a couple more weeks after that. Once I bought a queen, put the queen in the hive, and also never do a direct release. I put the queen in the hive for a few days, but since I was so concerned about the hive, I decided to not let her completely eat out of the cage she was in with her attendant bees. After, again, she'd been in there for a few days, so we dug it out, and then I tried to direct release her, and she flew off. Again, that's me making a mistake of just trying to hustle things up when I should have just taken an extra day or two. So we bought a second queen, and then the queen, we go to the hive to put this new queen in, and I just decided to, okay, let's really double check that we don't have anything going on in here, and I'm also just keeping track of where the brood is in terms of its life cycle and that sort of thing. And I'm seeing a new brood. And then I see the queen. So the queen we had bought came back. She flew off, but she came back. So apparently she had known it was home enough to fly back. So we had an extra queen, and we decided to do this was early August maybe. We decided to say, hey, we still got a good bit of nectar flow going, so let's try to do a split. Put some frames in a nuke box that we had gotten the bees in originally, put the new queen in there, and some feed in there, and we thought we would be good. And this is one of those where it's like, we should have just checked, but we had those nuke boxes, they have little pinholes at the bottom. You can't really see it unless you hold it up to the sun. So we had honey, and we had put some feed in there as well for the bees to eat on, just to help them really get going. Well, a lot of that leaked out through those pinholes, and since this was August and it had turned into September, the nectar flow started drying up. Yeah, they just got robbed out, just crushed, and they were doing fine, and then they were gone. So yeah, failed to split. Sometimes you pay a stupid tax, but it was one of those where we definitely learned a good amount of stuff in that. But yeah, so we had this queen issue. We got that queen replaced in the control hive. But again, since I hadn't checked the mite levels after the HopGuard plate treatment, because I was dealing with all that, when I checked them again about a month later, the mite levels were through the roof. I don't know if I just didn't leave the HopGuard on long enough. Again, it said 14 days, and I did 14 days. Uh, now I'm seeing stuff where it's, oh, the range is 14 to like 21 or whatever. Don't quote me on that. I forget what the higher end was, but we had gone essentially the minimum time. And so I don't know if it would have been more effective, but it pretty much seemed like we hadn't treated it at all. So by that time that we'd realized it, we had these just mites taking over the hive. And we could see that the brood, we had a bunch of issues where the brood was dying essentially in the cells as they're trying to form. So we had to do, luckily it kind of timed out. We had one hive was a little bit better than the other. The 3D printed hive seemed to have the issues later, so it was still relatively healthy. And we were able to cross-load frames from the 3D hive into the control hive to help bolster them to get it through. And then the 3D printed hive started really struggling. And by that time, we had enough built up in the control hive to then put in the 3D printed hive. And we treated them both with, I think it was Formic Pro. It was the one that's 40 days. And we opted for that as opposed to a quick hit because the hives seemed like they were already pretty weak, and I didn't want to have the treatment itself be the problem that just causes the hive to collapse. So we did kind of the slower release, but we got through it. Both hives seemed to be doing pretty good. We got into the December time frame. Everybody was looking solid. That was about the last time I really got a good look in the hives. It's when the temperatures started kind of cooling down to, you know, mid 60s, low 60s, to the point where it's like you don't really want to check your hives. I have been feeding them for pretty much since October, November. Pretty much when they started struggling, I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and start feeding, just to help them not have to worry about foraging or anything like that. That they would have the supplies they needed. But then I had a curveball thrown at me in January. It warmed up to 80 degrees, so I was like, oh yeah, let's go check the hives. And opened up the experimental hive, and we had a second queen. Yep. Don't know how that one happened. It'd been about 6 weeks since we'd checked, so, you know, all said and done, they could have raised a queen, her hatch, and she's out there. But yeah, we had a second queen, unmarked queen. I was going through it, and at first I thought, oh, maybe the blue dot that we had on our marked queen just got rubbed off, which happens. Yeah, no, because I was looking at her and I was like, she don't look the same, I think. Like, I had to go back and look at pictures. I was like, I don't think she looks the same. Yeah, no, sure enough, different queen. Later on in the inspection, it was like, oh, yeah, here's our marked queen. They're one frame apart. Hadn't fought each other yet, apparently. Not quite sure why. My thinking is because it was January, there's no drones out at all. So my gut feeling was this one wasn't mated at all. What wouldn't have been a good queen for the hive, so we opted to remove her from the hive. Because if queen bees, if they don't go on their mating flight within about two weeks or so, they're not going to. And when there's no drones out, it was, again, it was 80 degrees, yes, in January, but it'd been cold weather, so there was nothing else around there. So yeah, so we had that little curveball thrown at us, but it also made me a little worried because I wasn't sure, again, with the hives having been such a weakened state in the late fall, I was worried that the hive was trying to replace that queen. Like if she had gotten some of the viruses or stuff that was killing their brood, which can happen, I was worried that the hive was wanting to replace their queen, and did I screw that up? But I went back here a couple of days ago. They seem like they're fine. I had downsized the experimental hive down to one box, and just this past week or so, getting ready for the spring to come, I went ahead and added the second box back to them because they were busting at the seams in that one box. So I thought as it warmed up, I didn't want them to go ahead and swarm prematurely. So they're back to two boxes. and we'll see where they go from there. But that's kind of where we're at. And the next thing we had a bit of a fun one with was proper storage of your honey supers and the drawn out comb. So proper protocol is when you're pulling off your honey supers to harvest the honey, you freeze the frames, you pull them out after a couple of days just to make sure if there's anything in there that it's good and not alive anymore. Then you go ahead and you harvest the honey, extract it, and then bottle it and all that good stuff. And then you put your frames someplace where bugs can't get into them and that sort of thing. So we did all that. We froze the frames, extracted the honey, and afterwards I put the frames in our guest bedroom, which that's kind of the protocol. You don't want to put them in your garage necessarily because you might find out you get a bunch of bees or something in your garage because they're not super airtight, that sort of thing. So I put them in my guest bedroom thinking we'd be fine with that. And I don't remember what it was. It'd been 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I went in just to check. I was moving stuff around in there, and I checked, and I saw we had wax moths in the hives somehow. My guess is just they got in the house somehow and decided to lay some eggs in there and had some larvae chewing through the wax. Is what they'll do, is they'll destroy the wax. Luckily I caught it. They'd only really gotten through like 1, 2, maybe 3 frames. So I froze all those frames again, put them back, but this time put a mosquito net over them. So that would just be my advice to anybody who's storing frames like that, is just make sure to cover them with some mosquito net or something like that, just to prevent any kind of bugs getting in there. Luckily we caught it early, so we still have pretty good frames for the honey supers, and we'll use those again this coming year, which means the bees don't have to do too much. They can just go ahead and during the nectar flow, they can just start packing that honey super full of honey, and it'll make the process much quicker, and we'll be able to gather honey quicker. That pretty much wraps up this video, this year in review. So what's coming next? I'm going to be putting out a video here shortly for like first year beekeepers. If this is your first year coming up, it's going to be kind of a overview of how to do beekeeping, essentially things to look out for, what to work on, what to make sure you know as a beekeeper, and then help you plan your season. And then the second video I have going to come out, haven't quite figured out how I'm going to phrase it, but it's going to be the kind of year twos and newer beekeepers, more experienced beekeepers, how to come out of winter and really catch your stride, how to avoid swarming, how to do splits, that sort of thing. So those 2 videos are going to be coming up here shortly. So yeah, if you could like, subscribe, do all that stuff that every other YouTuber asks you to do, that again, I really appreciate that. That really just helps us get the word out, and it tells YouTube that it's actually content you guys are interested in. So if you could do that for us, I would really appreciate it. And also for the fellas out there with some facial hair, I will be launching some beard oil and beard supply type products here in the near future. That's kind of what I've been working on in the winter. So yeah, Beware Beekeeping is about to have some beard oils, beard balms, and that sort of thing. We're looking to launch here in the next few weeks. So if you're interested in that, keep an eye out. I'll be posting the links. We're going to be on Amazon and all that stuff, so we're trying to make it super easy for people. But yeah, if you could check some of that out, I'd really appreciate it. And thanks y'all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.